Let's create a simple maze game with Unity 3D. I'm Dennis Jers. I teach at Seton Hill University, and I'm running a Unity 3D workshop for the 2019 Computers and Writing Conference, Unity 3D Game Spaces for Beginners. This is the game we'll be making together. It's just a start of a game, really, but the graphics, the physics, everything in Unity 3D is state-of-the-art. And it's free. The paid versions come with some extra perks, but the free, personal version is just as powerful. The downside is it's a huge download, about 10 gigabytes. Even if you have a fast connection, the Unity servers have been very slow lately. I spent a lot of time looking at a blank screen, wondering if anything's actually loading. But after I left my computer on overnight and downloaded the Explorer 3D game kit, I got this amazing tool set that lets you drag and drop game assets to create a really complex world full of interactive objects with no coding required. In fact, even though I already have all these files downloaded on my computer, it chugged away for almost an hour just opening my first completely blank starter world. In a 75-minute conference session, it is just not realistic to expect we can get very far in a complex tool like this. But I did want to give you a sense of what it's possible to do with Unity. Our project will be much simpler, but I hope that what we can accomplish together over the course of this tutorial will whet your appetite and help you feel confident enough to explore further. I've posted some links on my blog, so take a look at this URL for some resources or to get in touch with me about this tutorial. To install Unity, we start by going to unity.com and create a free account. On my weblog, I've added a link to the Unity documentation for installing the Unity Hub. That page will step you through the process for installing the utility, the Hub, which keeps track of all the files that you will need for all the projects you're going to use. If Unity upgrades its servers, I'll try to record the installation process sometime in the near future, but for now, I'm just going to have to refer you to Unity's step-by-step instructions. Here we are in the Unity Hub, which is the download manager that makes sure you have all the files that you need. Under Installs, if you don't have a version of Unity installed, you can get one by clicking on Add. It's about a 10 gigabyte download, and even if you have a fast internet connection, the Unity servers are rather slow. So this is not something that you can do instantly. Set some time aside, but I already have the couple versions of the editor installed, so when I click on Projects, I'll just click New, and I'm creating a new project. I'm going to call it... Okay. And note this location. You can change the location if you want, but just note that location because you'll need to know where your files are later on. So I'll click Create. So we're looking now at the Unity developing environment. If your window looks a little bit different, make sure you go under Window, Layouts 2x3. That's the layout that I'll be using here. I'm going to have you now use some assets that you'll need for this tutorial. So right-click here on Assets and Reveal in Finder. So this is the location of the assets for your project. I want you to add a couple assets. You'll find a link to where you can download them in the description. Copy these two folders, My Assets and Standard Assets, and I'm going to place them here in my project folder inside the Assets folder. So I will paste them here. Okay, so now your Assets folder should look like this with My Assets, Scenes, and Standard Assets. The My Assets folder and the Standard Assets folder that you took from the files that you downloaded, those should be in the Assets subfolder of your project. Okay, so that's how it should look. So now we'll close out of that, come back here. I'm going to right-click on this and I'm going to get Refresh. And Unity will look through that folder for any assets that it doesn't already know about. There we go. So we'll go into what's actually in these folders a little bit later. We're not going to worry about them right now. A very, very quick tour of this workspace. This is the scene area. This is your editing window. Down here is the game window. This is what you'll see a preview of your game as you're working on it. This is the hierarchy. All the objects that you create for the game world will appear here in a big hierarchical tree inside this sample scene. What we have already there is a main camera and a directional light. We're not actually going to be doing anything with them, so just to clear up the playing space, just click here in this gray area and you'll see a closed eye or a crossed out eye, so that we just want to be distracted by those things. Over here, the project area, here's where we will see folders that contain various things we'll work with, including materials and textures. And depending on what you select over here in the inspector, you'll see a lot of options. So that's basically what the world is like. The navigation, as you're working your way through the 3D space, let's first create a game object, 3D object, plane. And now this plane appears in 3D space. These different tools here, if I click Q, I get a hand tool that allows me to move myself through the world. I'm not actually changing anything in the world. I'm holding down the right mouse button in order to pan around, and with the hand tool selected, I'm clicking down with the left button in order to just change my view on the world. When I click here on this or click W for the move tool, I can drag along the X-axis, the Z-axis, and the Y-axis. When I click E for the rotate tool, again it's QWER, it's just the top layer of your keys. E is the rotate tool, and I can grab onto this blue Z ring, the red ring that shows along the X-axis, and then when I do when I do R for this version, I get scale. I can scale it on the X-axis. And over here under transform, you can see when I grab this box on the scaling widget, you can see the number over there changes. Now, I've just kind of chaotically, randomly changed this object, but I can just come over here under transform and reset. And that goes back to 0, 0, 0, that's the center of the world, oriented in a neutral way with a neutral scale. Let's create an object to kind of live on this plane. Game object, 3D object, cube. Okay? And I'm using the mouse wheel to scroll in to get a look at this cube. I clicked here, this is a W for the move tool. I drag the Y-axis up, so it's kind of floating up in the air. And the world looks pretty bland because it's just, a white object on a white background. So let's, under Assets, I'm going to right-click, Create Material. I'm going to call this Ground. And I'm going to use this color swatch. I'm going to click there and change it to a kind of a grassy green color. And then when I drag this material sphere to the plane, it becomes green. Under Assets, I'm going to create another material, and this one I will call Crate. And I will give it kind of a, a wood-looking sort of color. And I will drag that object to my, click on that, drag it, get to my crate, and now I have two, objects that look a little different. The world is pretty flat and boring, and even more boring, when you click the triangle to run the game, nothing happens. We didn't turn on any gravity, so the game has nothing to do. Now, everything is red right now, and that's just kind of to remind you the game is running. So if you want to go back and make more changes to the game world, I'll click this triangle again to pause the game, and now we can make changes over here. Let's select this cube, and over here under Add Component, I'm going to start typing until I see Rigidbody, don't select Rigidbody 2D, but select Rigidbody. Click there, and that's really all we have to do. Now when we click play, physics will take over and we'll see the box fall. Okay, great. I'll stop it by clicking the triangle again. And now with the cube still selected, under Edit, Duplicate, and you can see over here, I have another cube. And if I just drag up on the y-axis, now we have two boxes. Now those boxes are perfectly lined up on top of each other. So I'm going to drag this box off to the side so it's a little off center, so that now when I click the play button, again, physics will take over and we should see some toppling action happen. There we go. Let's now make this world look a little better. Click the triangle to end the game. I'm going to click here on the ground texture, and see this little circle next to the word albedo? That's just the surface color of the object. You'll get a texture picker. Click here on this one that says Grass Hill Albedo, and already the texture looks a little bit better, but this texture is adding this green color here. So I'm going to click on the swatch. You can see if I change it to a different color, you can see the texture changes. If we want to minimize that, just make this color white, and now this white won't affect the texture at all. So already that looks a lot nicer. Click now on the Create material, and among these are again part of the assets that I had you download as part of the tutorial. Select this Create illustration, and now we actually see something that looks a little bit more realistic. Now, if you ever get disoriented and let's say you're accidentally, looking off in this direction, you know what's going on and you're lost, if I want to, I can click here on Cube, and then with my mouse in this window, I click F, and it will sort of travel and zoom me in the proper direction. Okay, well, so far this is not much of a game. What you want is to be able to walk around in your happy little world. So let's add a first-person character. It's actually a lot simpler than you might think. Here under Standard Assets, under Character, we open that up. We have First-Person Character, open that up. Under Prefabs, FPS Controller. So let me just move this window aside a little bit so you can get a better look at what's going on here. This is what we want. Under Assets, Standard Assets, Characters, First-Person Character, Prefabs, take FPS Controller. When I drag that into the game world, automatically it changes and we start seeing the world from the view of a first-person character. So I'm just going to place my first-person character right about there. Now, let's see. It looks like Unity has placed this character so close to the edge I might fall. So I'm just going to drag my character in a little bit. And move them so that my character is just touching the bottom surface. Your character might be down there, something else. If you're lost, if Unity puts your character in a weird place, just come over here to Transform, change it to Reset. That'll place you in the center of the game world. I'll drag my character up and then just out a little bit. Now you might have to, depending on what angle you're looking from, you might need to place your character at another area. So don't necessarily place your character on the screen exactly here. Place it where you can see the cubes pretty well. When we push play, now not only do we have the gravity interacting with the objects, but we can walk around. I'm using the space bar to jump. I'm using the W, A, and SD keys to move, and I get up to the object and jump on it and knock it off the ledge. And if I'm not careful, then I accidentally fall off the ledge and now I'm gone too. All right, well, hit Escape to get control of the mouse again. Then I use the mouse to stop the game by hitting the triangle. And there, we've got a very simple first-person player game. Now, if you're playing this game, you'll notice that it's pretty, you know, this surface that we're looking at is pretty flat. You can see the light is shining off of it. Same thing with the crates. It's a very flat surface. It looks better than it did when it was just a solid color, but we can improve that. I hit escape, I hit the play button, and under my assets textures, you can see I've got you know, plenty of things set up. See this funny blue version of the crate and the black and white version of the crate. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, but those are ways that Unity's graphics engine can trick your eye into thinking there's more detail than there really is. So let's go to Assets, click on the crate material, and then I'm going to add under here next to Normal Map. I'm going to add this blue version of the crate texture, and then under Height Map, I'm going to add this black and white version. The lighter versions are higher and the darker versions are blacker. We can double that normal map or that height map for shadow with the idea that, you know, we're adding a little bit of embedded shadows. And I'm using the mouse wheel to zoom in. Let's zoom in on a cube. F to zoom in a little bit more. And just watch this very carefully. If I'm here on the crate material and under height map, watch as I adjust this little knob here. You can see we get a little simulation of some extra detail. And it's not a whole lot, and if I'd just shown this to you, you probably never would have noticed it. Let's click on ground, and under height map, let's select this one that says Mud Rocky Normals. Select that, and again, if we zoom in closer to this, and I adjust this, you can see we get some, you know, little bumps. It's just adding a little bit of extra detail that tricks the eye into seeing more detail than is really there. Now let's give ourselves a little bit more room to work with. I'm going to click here on the ground plane, and I'm going to scale it up so that it's 10 on the X and 10 on the Z axis. So it's a much larger plane. Now if your cubes changed shape as well, it's probably because your cubes were, I'm going to drag this cube on here onto the plane. Now in this case, the cubes are child objects of the plane, and now any changes that I make to the plane will also affect the cube. Now we don't actually want that, so I'm going to drag these cubes off the plane so they're out there. But if your cubes changed size when you adjusted the plane, just undo those changes back again. Make sure your cubes are not child objects of the plane. Make sure they're all lined up over here, and try that again. When I made the surface plane here, I'm tired of this, let's call the plane, let's rename that ground, and we'll call cube 1, let's rename that crate 1, and we'll name this one crate. Okay, so when I expanded the size of the ground, now the grass texture looks crappy again, but we can fix that. Under ground, here's the main maps. There's a secondary map so that when we're close to this shape, we're going to use this. We'll just create another copy of the grass hill albedo, and we're going to tell it, repeat that texture 10 times in the X direction and 10 times in the Y direction. And now we can see it's a nice when you look at it up close, and it's nice when you look at it from a distance.